Book 1, Chapter 13 of Michael Strogoff, Courier of the Tsar. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Michael Strogoff by Jules Verne. Book 1, Chapter 13. Duty Before Everything. Nadia, with the clear perception of a right-minded woman, guessed that some secret motive directed all Michael Strogoff's actions, that he, for a reason unknown to her, did not belong to himself, and that in this instance especially he had heroically sacrificed to duty even his resentment at the gross injury he had received. Nadia therefore asked no explanation from Michael. Had not the hand which she had extended to him already replied to all that he might have been able to tell her? Michael remained silent all the evening. The postmaster not being able to supply them with fresh horses until the next morning, a whole night must be passed at the house. Nadia could profit by it to take some rest, and a room was therefore prepared for her. The young girl would no doubt have preferred not to leave her companion, but she felt that he would rather be alone, and she made ready to go to her room. Just as she was about to retire she could not refrain from going up to Michael to say good night. "Brother?" she whispered, but he checked her with a gesture. The girl sighed and left the room. Michael Strogoff did not lie down. He could not have slept even for an hour. The place on which he had been struck by the brutal traveler felt like a burn. "For my country and the father," he muttered, as he ended his evening prayer. He especially felt a great wish to know who was the man who had struck him, whence he came, and where he was going. As to his face, the features of it were so deeply engraven on his memory that he had no fear of ever forgetting them. Michael Strogoff at last asked for the postmaster. The latter, a Siberian of the old type, came directly, and looking rather contemptuously at the young man, waited to be questioned. "You belong to the country?" asked Michael. "Yes." "Do you know that man who took my horses?" "No." "Have you never seen him before?" "Never." "Who do you think he was?" "A man who knows how to make himself obeyed." Michael fixed his piercing gaze upon the Siberian, but the other did not quail before it. "Do you dare to judge me?" exclaimed Michael. "Yes," answered the Siberian. "There are some things even a plain merchant cannot receive without returning." "Blows?" "Blows, young man. I am of an age and strength to tell you so." Michael went up to the postmaster and laid his two powerful hands on his shoulders. Then in a peculiarly calm tone, "Be off, my friend," said he. "Be off! I could kill you." The postmaster understood. "I like him better for that," he muttered, and retired without another word. At 8 o'clock the next morning, the 24th of July, 3 strong horses were harnessed to the tarantass. Michael Strogoff and Nadia took their places, and Ichim, with its disagreeable remembrances, was soon left far behind. At the different relays on which they stopped during the day, Strogoff ascertained that the Berlin still preceded them on the road to Irkutsk, and that the traveler, as hurried as they were, never lost a minute in pursuing his way across the steppe. At 4 o'clock in the evening they reached Abatskaya, 50 miles farther on, where the Ichim, one of the principal affluents of the Irtych, had to be crossed. This passage was rather more difficult than that of the Tobol. Indeed, the current of the Ichim was very rapid just at that place. During the Siberian winter, the rivers being all frozen to a thickness of several feet, they are easily practicable, and the traveler even crosses them without being aware of the fact, for their beds have disappeared under the snowy sheet spread uniformly over the steppe. But in summer the difficulties of crossing are sometimes great. In fact, 2 hours were taken up in making the passage of the Ichim, which much exasperated Michael, especially as the boatmen gave them alarming news of the Tartar invasion. Some of Feofar Khan's scouts had already appeared on both banks of the lower Ichim, in the southern parts of the government of Tobolsk. Omsk was threatened. They spoke of an engagement which had taken place between the Siberian and Tartar troops on the frontier of the great Kirghiz horde, an engagement not to the advantage of the Russians, who were weak in numbers. The troops had retreated thence, and in consequence there had been a general emigration of all the peasants of the province. The boatmen spoke of horrible atrocities committed by the invaders, pillage, theft, incendiarism, murder. Such was the system of Tartar warfare. The people all fled before Feofar Khan. Michael Strogoff's great fear was lest, in the depopulation of the towns, he should be unable to obtain the means of transport. He was therefore extremely anxious to reach Omsk. Perhaps there they would get the start of the Tartar scouts, who were coming down the valley of the Irtych, and would find the road open to Irkutsk. Just at the place where the tarantass crossed the river ended what is called, in military language, the Ichim chain, a chain of towers, or little wooden forts, extending from the southern frontier of Siberia for a distance of nearly 400 versts. Formerly these forts were occupied by detachments of Cossacks, and they protected the country against the Kirghiz, as well as against the Tartars. But since the Muscovite government had believed these hordes reduced to absolute submission, they had been abandoned, and now could not be used, just at the time when they were needed. Many of these forts had been reduced to ashes, and the boatmen even pointed out the smoke to Michael, rising in the southern horizon, and showing the approach of the Tartar advance guard. As soon as the ferryboat landed the tarantass on the right bank of the Ichim, the journey across the steppe was resumed with all speed. Michael Strogoff remained very silent. He was, however, always attentive to Nadia, helping her to bear the fatigue of this long journey without break or rest, but the girl never complained. She longed to give wings to the horses. Something told her that her companion was even more anxious than herself to reach Irkutsk, and how many versts were still between. It also occurred to her that if Omsk was entered by the Tartars, Michael's mother, who lived there, would be in danger, and that this was sufficient to explain her son's impatience to get to her. Nadia at last spoke to him of old Marfa, and of how unprotected she would be in the midst of all these events. "Have you received any news of your mother since the beginning of the invasion?" she asked. "None, Nadia. The last letter my mother wrote to me contained good news. Marfa is a brave and energetic Siberian woman. Notwithstanding her age, she has preserved all her moral strength. She knows how to suffer." "I shall see her, brother," said Nadia quickly. "Since you gave me the name of sister, I am Marfa's daughter." And as Michael did not answer, she added, "Perhaps your mother has been able to leave Omsk." "It is possible, Nadia," replied Michael, "and I hope she may have reached Tobolsk. Marfa hates the Tartars. She knows the steppe, and would have no fear in just taking her staff and going down the banks of the Irtych. There is not a spot in all the province unknown to her. Many times has she traveled all over the country with my father, and many times I myself, when a mere child, have accompanied them across the Siberian desert. Yes, Nadia, I trust that my mother has left Omsk." "And when shall you see her?" "I shall see her on my return." "If, however, your mother is still at Omsk, will you be able to spare an hour to go to her?" "I shall not go and see her." "You will not see her?" "No, Nadia," said Michael, his chest heaving as he felt he could not go on replying to the girl's questions. "You say no? Why, brother, if your mother is still at Omsk, for what reason could you refuse to see her?" "For what reason, Nadia? You ask me for what reason?" exclaimed Michael, in so changed a voice that the young girl started. "For the same reason as that which made me patient even to cowardice with the villain who—" He could not finish his sentence. "Calm yourself, brother," said Nadia in a gentle voice. "I only know one thing, or rather I do not know it, I feel it. It is that all your conduct is now directed by the sentiment of a duty more sacred, if there can be one, than that which unites the son to the mother." Nadia was silent, and from that moment avoided every subject which in any way touched on Michael's peculiar situation. He had a secret motive which she must respect. She respected it. The next day, July 25th, at 3 o'clock in the morning, the tarantass arrived at Chilkamsk, having accomplished a distance of 80 miles since it had crossed the Ichim. They rapidly changed horses. Here, however, for the first time, the iemschik made difficulties about starting, declaring that detachments of Tartars were roving across the steppe, and that travelers, horses, and carriages would be a fine prize for them. Only by dint of a large bribe could Michael get over the unwillingness of the iemschik, for in this instance, as in many others, he did not wish to show his podorojna. The last ukase, having been transmitted by telegraph, was known in the Siberian provinces, and a Russian specially exempted from obeying these words would certainly have drawn public attention to himself, a thing above all to be avoided by the Czar's courier. As to the